back to the Girly Girl Bookworm. So today I have for you my February wrap-up part 1. It's a few days after the 15th, so I figured it would be a perfect time to film this and get this out. I've had a really interesting, beginning of February because I feel like I've gotten through so many books, but I haven't loved, any of them. So that's been kind of interesting. The beginning of the month, it was just like 3-star, 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 3-star. So hopefully, I think it's turning around. We'll see. So the first book that I read in the month of February is Legends and Lattes by Travis Baldree. Now, this is like booktube, bookstagrams, like little darling lately as a cozy fantasy. And we're following Viv, who has decided she wants to leave her life of fighting behind and she wants to open a coffee shop where nobody knows what coffee is. So she kind of has to break a lot of barriers in terms of getting people to understand what coffee is, getting them interested in coming to her shop, making her shop, building her shop, and kind of she's got this bias against her, obviously, because she's normally known for fighting. I liked this one, so don't get me wrong. I understand why people like this. It's definitely warm. It's definitely cozy. It's fun. However, it felt very scattered, where I just felt like if it was fleshed out a bit more, I think I would have enjoyed it. I'm not a huge fantasy reader to begin with, so sometimes I do really like when it's spelled out for me, and I felt like we were jumping times where it would just randomly be the timeline just didn't make sense to me because it felt like things were either happening really fast or really slow, and I just was very confused with the pacing of it. And there were some things that were really explained, and then there were some things that weren't, and I felt like I don't know. I think I would try at least the next book because when this was first written, it was kind of self-published. Not that there's anything wrong with self-published books, because I do like self-published books, but I think that there was a different jump between when it was independently published and now it's traditionally published that I think I'm just looking for a little bit more. I don't know if I didn't describe that the way I wanted to, but what I'm saying is I just feel like maybe now that the next one will probably be traditionally published just like this one was, maybe there'll be a little more depth to it. It was definitely a cozy read, but for a book that was under 300 pages, it actually took me quite a bit to finish it. So I have a feel I don't know. Pacing was my concern with that one. So 3 stars. And then we have another bookstagram darling, which was The Housemaid. And this one I read through Kindle Unlimited, so I don't own it. And I'm so glad that I don't own it because I didn't actually really like it. We're following a woman who she's out on parole. And she decides that she wants to become a housekeeper for this family. It's a husband, a wife, and a child, and she wants to become their housemaid because 1, it's a job, and 2, it's a roof over her head because it's a live-in position, which you kind of need when you're out on parole. You need a place. Not only do you need work, but you need housing. So this is the best of both worlds. And so she starts working there, and the woman that she's working for is kind of sketchy. And so the thing about this book is it's really hard to know who to trust because you kind of don't really trust the housemaid, but you also don't trust her employer. So it's trying to play this game of who am I trusting? And I just felt it just ended up feeling very generic domestic thriller. Which there's nothing wrong with that, but the way it was getting hyped up made me think that it brought something new to the table. And to me, it really kind of didn't bring anything new to the table. At times, I had to almost force myself to pick it up to finish it because I just wasn't enjoying it. At one point, I was falling asleep while reading, and I didn't care. And I was I'm just going to keep trudging even though I'm falling asleep during this. So I gave it 3 stars. I think it was a very beginner thriller type of read. I think I would try her again. I know that there's a lot of love for her books in general, so I think I would try her again. That one was just kind of a miss for me, and I don't know if it was also the hype preceded it, so I went into it with higher expectations, and then when it didn't meet those, it was disappointing or what, but 3 stars for that one. Then I read Lunar Love by Lauren Kung Jessen, And I don't know if I went in with this with wrong expectations, but I just thought this was going to be much better than it was. It's about two rivalry, matchmaking businesses. They both decide to match based on the Chinese zodiac signs, and they one is very like old school, where like I'm gonna meet with you and we're gonna like decide who we're gonna find dates for you for, and like the other one is a digital platform like the regular Tinder, OkCupid, Plenty of Fish, like that type of thing. And they end up having a rivalry. Now I will say, if you read the synopsis, so that sometimes like I'll start a book and then I'll go back and read the synopsis while I'm in the middle of it. The synopsis to me like doesn't necessarily like match what happens, and that's not true, because what they describe does happen, but it talks about them making this like bet in this deal, like if I can make you fall in love first, like I win, and if you make me fall in love first your way, like you win. And that does eventually happen, but the good chunk of the beginning of the book is like she finds out who he is, and she decides to try to date him to sabotage him in his business. And like that felt like that took precedence over that other storyline. So like that made me like angry, because one, I didn't like her making those choices of trying to sabotage him and deceive him. Like I wanted the bet, I wanted the fun part. So like that kind of like bothered me. And then at the end, he does something as she takes complete offense to it. And I'm like, girl, what you did was 10 times worse. Like, why are you mad at him? So it didn't do it for me. I gave it 3 stars. It was just fine, but like I couldn't stand her. I loved the love interest. He was funny and witty, and just like he just seemed like this like teddy bear of a guy, and I really liked him. I just didn't like her. So, and I like the idea of Chinese zodiac being how you possibly might match with somebody. So like I loved all of those components. I just like couldn't stand her. So 3 stars. I finally went back and finished Island Queen by Vanessa Riley. This is a book that I started last year on audio, and I think I was like cleaning or something, and I realized that I needed to be paying closer attention to it than I was. So I like stopped, and I never repicked it back up last year. And then I was like looking for an audiobook, and I was like, wait a minute, I still never finished this. So I went back and I re-downloaded this one, and I got this one. This baby is like almost 600 pages. It's massive. We are following the real life story. It's like a fictionalized story, but like we're following the story of, I want to get her name right, Dorothy. She doesn't have her last name. Where did her name go? Because it's in the synopsis on Goodreads, because I used it in my Goodreads review. Well, it's based on a real person, and she was born into slavery in the Caribbean, in the the West Indies, as it was getting kind of discovered, I guess you could say. They were colonies at that point. So she starts her life in slavery, and eventually she works her way out of slavery to the point where she is then one of the richest landowners of the West Indies. I found it really interesting, but it was also so long. And it was hard to like keep people straight, because she's constantly coming in contact with so many people. She has like 10 children with many different men. And it was so, I also was, like I said, I was listening to it. So like there's dates in here, but obviously it's hard to keep track of dates. But like when you are still having children while your children are also having children, it made it kind of confusing. And I understand like that's the way her life was. And like, you started having children extremely young, that's what's going to happen. But it was daunting. It was interesting. It was okay. I gave it 3 stars. It does get super kind of repetitive. She's also constantly kind of like moving from place to place, which can make it kind of hard to track, and like who's she with today, and like every now and then you'd get a perspective from like the future, and then you would come back to the past, and it would kind of just be a little jarring. So I gave it 3 stars. I think it was definitely something that I like am not mad that I read, but it just wasn't something that was like super engaging and enjoyable. Lots of trigger warnings. It's a time of slavery. It's a time of war. there's a lot of like miscarriage and death and mistreatment and violence, and so it's got a lot of things in it, so just be careful. And I'm glad that I could say that I finally read that one. Then technically I'm counting this, but I like shouldn't be counting it, but I'm going to. I finished Amari and the Night Brothers by B.B. Alston in February. I started it in January with my students. And I typically don't count the books that I read aloud to them in my Goodreads challenge. I don't, hit or miss, like depends on what it is. Like if it's a book that I had interest in already and now I'm reading it to them, I'll count it. This is a reread for me because I loved this book so much that I definitely wanted to read it with my students. I actually got a copy of it for free from B.B. Alston himself. If you are a teacher, if you message him saying that you're a teacher, he will send you one. And then I also had a lovely follower over on Instagram send me a copy as well for my classroom. So I was like, this year I'm definitely reading it. So I have been I pre-ordered Amari and the Great Game, and then I never read it. And then I was like, you know what? This will be perfect. I will reread this, and then I will be ready for Amari and the Great Game. So I'm going to count it because of the fact that I'm almost using it as a refresher for Amari and the Great Game. So I'm counting it 5 stars. My kids loved it. They were so bummed to hear that it's not a movie. Hopefully soon. That would be awesome. But they really enjoyed it, and I enjoyed my time rereading it. Amari is about a little girl. Well, she's not little. She's like, I think she's in middle school or about to go in high school. And she, her brother's been missing. And she has no idea where he is, and she is living in an inner city, but she's going to a private school. And when we first meet her, she's in big trouble. She's about to lose her scholarship for getting in trouble with a fight with these girls who definitely, they deserve to be in trouble and not her. And she ends up getting this like mysterious message through a briefcase. And she ends up getting nominated for this supernatural like summer camp. And she is now exposed to this supernatural world that she never knew existed, and she knows that this is the chance to potentially find her brother. And it is fantastic, magic, and mystery, and intrigue, and friendship, but it also has a lot of commentary on the real world, and it, like, parallels, and it's so good. Can't wait to now read the sequel, now that I've done that reread. Then I read Tell Me Lies by Carola Levering. This was another 3-star read for me. I'm so bummed because it's supposed to be a Hulu show, and I'm like, I had high hopes for it. This is my 3rd book that I've read by her. This is actually her debut novel. This one is following a couple who meet in not high school, they meet in college, and it's kind of following their relationship through college and then post-college. They have a very toxic relationship. You are following their toxic relationship, the toxic relationship between her and her mother. Her friends aren't that, I don't know, I didn't really find her friends that great. And, like, even her relationship with herself, she has an eating disorder, so trigger warnings for that. And to me, I just, not that, like, you want to see abuse on page, like, that's not what I'm trying to say. And I tried to pick my Instagram review this morning, and I was like, I don't know how to describe, like, I wanted more for this without being more. Like, I just felt like I was expecting such intensity, and I feel like a lot of the toxic behaviors were very subtle, like, very still toxic, but, like, not as, like, impactful as, like, I expected them to kind of be. He does have a way with words. He does cheat on her. Like, he won't commit to her. Like, so there's, like, lots of problems with it, but I don't know. I just expected it to be a little bit more intense. I understand that, like, even in college, like, that definitely is manipulation. That's definitely, like, I'm not saying it wasn't toxic. I just expected, I don't know, more. And it's almost, it's almost 400 pages, and I just still felt like not much happened. And then in the end, it was like, bum, 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 this is a twist, and here's a shocking thing. And I was like, but what? We were supposed to be concerned about that? I didn't know I was supposed to be concerned about that. If I knew that, maybe I would have put 2 and 2 together earlier, but, like, I was supposed to be aware of that? I don't know. So I went with 3 stars. It was okay. I don't know. I think I've liked her other books more. Then I listened to Tweet Cute by Emma Lord. I've been wanting to read this book for a really long time, and so finally I was like, it's around Valentine's Day, and it's available on Hoopla. Like, I'm finally gonna read it, and I just, again, didn't love it. I gave it 3.5 stars. It's cute. It's cheesy, literally. We've got two friends. Well, I guess they're not really friends. They're friends, but they're not friends. In high school, her family owns a restaurant, and so does his family. His family has owned this for generations, and her family is like starting this like franchisee business. Her dad doesn't live with them anymore. He has stayed with the main franchise, like the main restaurant, and has like parted ways with her mom. And they sort of end up in a tweet war, kind of, but they're also talking to each other on an app that he has developed where like everybody in the high school can join, and you kind of join as an alias, like you join as an animal. So like I could join and be like, I'm a koala, and like talk to people as koala. So she's talking to Wolf and he's talking to Bluebird, and they don't realize that they're talking to each other, and they kind of have an in-person rivalry, but they're also friends, but they're also like, it's very complicated. High school complicated love. I don't know. Part of me, like I said, it was fine. Nothing that was very like, oh, this is so cute. I love this. Like, there was no I love you, feel good feelings to this. Like, it was just like this is an okay story, and I'm just watching it and consuming it, and that's what it is. But the thing that I was confused about is like, I understood the like enemies, but like we secretly like each other type of thing. And like it'll grow to like, but they start in this tweet battle because her family makes a grilled cheese that is similar to his family's grilled cheese. So they end up in this tweet battle. But the thing that I was confused about was the fact that like he didn't know her family had the restaurant and she didn't know his family had the restaurant. I'm like, but if his family has had this for generations, like there's no way that this is not his entire personality, that like you know about him when you go to school. I just thought that was confusing because they started like this tweet battle without realizing that they were even enemies in the first. It was a little, I don't know, I was a little confused, but it was all right. It was okay. As a 30, how old am I? 32-year-old woman reading about teenagers falling in love, it was fine. It was fine. Then I read Something Wilder by Christina Lauren, and guys, you know how much I hated The Honeymooners? I loved this one though. I had heard that this one was different. Like everybody kept saying this is like nothing like Christina Lauren has ever written before. This is different. And so I was like, maybe I'll try it. And I'm so glad that I did. I have zero interest in going back to any of their old stuff except for potentially In a Holidays and the Soulmate Experiment, because I think the Soulmate Experiment reminds me of the one by John Mars, except not villainous. So I feel like I kind of want to try that one. And In the Holidays has that Groundhog's Day story that I've been like kind of loving lately. So I could kind of get into those two, but like I don't really have any interest in any of their other stuff. But this one, guys, 5 stars. My only 5 stars so far this month. This one is about a girl. She used to like work on her dad's ranch, and he sells it out, kind of out from underneath her. He was definitely a very big like explorer. There's rumor that he knows where Butch Cassidy's like money is, and years prior she was in a relationship with a man, and he was out working on the ranch with them, and he ends up getting a call that he has to go to help his mom, and so he leaves, and they never hear from each other again. Like he promises he's going to come back, she never hears from him, and so they kind of go their own separate ways. And now he is going on a trip, and he is going with his friends, and they have this thing like every year one of the friends plans a trip, and you just kind of don't know where you're going until you're going. And when he gets there, it turns out to be this kind of like camping, like looking for treasure type of trip through the desert. And guess who his tour guide is? None other than this woman. And there's hijinks, and there's obviously a possibility of looking for treasure. Some trouble arises, and it ends up being absolutely a crazy ride. There's puzzles, and it was so good. I feel like it's so hard to talk about this one without, like, spoiling it, but, like, this was, like, part romance, part mystery, but also, like, had you on the edge of the seat with kind of a thriller kind of going on, but it also had just, like, this, like, her coming to terms with, like, how she felt about her father, and, like, there's a lot. There's a lot, and I loved it, and I gave it 5 stars, and it makes me excited to potentially try them again if they ever write something of this vein again. So, excited about that. Then I read The Hunter by Jennifer Herrera. I was reading this for the Novel Cult Book Club that I take part in on Instagram. And this is this month's pick. And it's funny because when I started it, I had no expectations going into this book. I had never even heard of it until they picked it. So, like, I was going into it completely, no expectations, blind, but, like, the cover really didn't scream at me. So I was kind of like, I'm not really interested, but I'll read it because I'm participating in the book club. I started the book and I was liking it. I got 100 pages in very easily. And then it got to a point where I was like, am I confused? I don't know. Am I confused with this? I don't know. And then I couldn't put it down. I read it in a 24-hour span. Couldn't put it down. It was really fast paced. We're following a woman. She is a cop in the city, and she is currently suspended, and she's potentially going through she is separated from her husband. They have a child, and her brother kind of calls her back to work as a cop in his town because there have been 3 bodies, so he figures she will help him figure this out, even though she has run away from living in her hometown. And so she comes back and she's got to figure out, like, what's going on. And it ended up becoming, like, extremely dark. There's a little bit of kind of, I wouldn't say, like, it's kind of magical realism, but, like, it's kind of not. Like, it blurs that line of, like, what's reality and what's actually happening. And it was a good time. Like, I ended up really enjoying it. Like, I gave it 4 stars. Like, is it going to be something that's super memorable? I don't know. I don't know what it's like. But for that moment in time, it was exactly what I needed after having all those other books be so slow to be able to pick this up and, like, fly through it. And that's the other thing about Something Wilder too. I was only like 10% into this. Like, I only had read a few chapters, and then I devoured it essentially in one day after, like, that. After I was already, like, the few chapters in, when I picked it up, I finished it immediately. Like, I finished this and picked this up and immediately finished this too. So, like, these two really stood out to me as, like, really fast, really quick, good time reads. And then I read Twice in a Lifetime by Melissa Barron. I listened to this one on audio. Big trigger warnings for anxiety, panic attacks on page. We meet her, I can't remember her name now, Isla, and she has fled her city life to go live in Missouri after, like, being really exhausted with her life, and she's dealing with this anxiety piece and all that. And one day she gets a text from this guy, and he's like, hi, Isla. And she's like, who are you? Like, what is going on? And he's like, well, actually, you're my wife. And she's like, no, you're not. Like, I'm not married to anybody. Who are you talking about? And he ends up sending her, like, a wedding picture, and there she is, married to this man. She's never met this man. And come to find out, like, he is from, like, future world, and he has called to kind of connect with her. She finds out some things that kind of will cause her life to change. And he's really supportive, and it was a really interesting story. I gave it 4 stars. I wanted to be more emotionally connected than I was. It was very sweet. It's very easy to read. It was everything I wanted. I just wanted that emotional connection that I didn't necessarily get, and I don't know why I didn't get it, because this book just felt like one of those books that was going to really, like, tug at my heartstrings and really, like, break me. And there were scenes that should have done that, and it didn't. So 4 stars, still really strong, just didn't have me emotionally there. Now I'm currently reading 3 books. This is 6. 3 books. I'm home alone today, so I'm hoping to at least finish 2 of them, because I only have, like, I have like an hour and a half left in my audiobook. And my physical read flies by really fast. So hopefully that's a good sign. So my Kindle book is I'll Be You by Janelle Brown. I borrowed this one from the library as an ebook. I'm not very far into it. So far, I'm not the biggest fan. It's about twins. and they have like kind of separated their lives. We can tell that they have, as this is what I'm going off of what I already know. They were childhood actresses because they were twins and they got spotted, and that's what twins do, I guess. And now we're in the future and we're following one of the twins, and they, like I said, have really zero contact. They haven't had contact in about 2 years. And she has been a year sober, a little over a year sober at this point, and she gets a call from her dad, and he's like, "Hey, your sister's missing. We were supposed to be watching her child for a year." And she's like, "Child? Like, that doesn't add up timeline-wise." And like, "Oh, that she adopted her. We need you to come help us. She was supposed to stay here for a week, and now she's been here, and like, your mom needs help. Can you come help take care of your niece?" So she goes, and she's trying to figure out like what could have happened to her sister. So far, it's okay. It's not wowing me, but I'm not very far in, so hopefully that'll change. My audiobook that I'm listening to is Mame by Jessica George. I'm listening to this on audio through Libro FM. This is okay. I'm not hating it. And I think it will end up becoming a 4-star read. I'm hoping by the end. Mame is the main character. It means woman, and that's kind of been her nickname. Her name's Maddie. She's had to take care of her father because her mom isn't always present. He is suffering from Parkinson's disease, and she really hasn't had a chance to fully like embrace and live her life. She's definitely very sheltered. She hasn't had many experiences, and at one point her mom is coming back from Ghana, and she's taking this opportunity to try to like live her life and figure out who she is. She finds an apartment. She quits her job. She's trying to take advantage of her friends asking her to hang out, and she's meeting guys, and it's interesting, but sometimes I find her very naive, and I understand like potentially kind of her circumstance, but there's times where I'm just like, how old are we again? So like it's blurry, like it's okay, but I'm not finding myself like itching to go back and finish. Like, well, right now I am, because I know I only have an hour left in it. I just want to finish it, but like I wasn't finding myself like excited to turn it on. And then the book that I'm physically reading is The Fastest Way to Fall by Denise Williams. I asked on a poll on Instagram which one I should read, this one or Do You Take This Man, and this one won. We are following our main character. She is working for like this, it's like an online like magazine. That's what the vibes I'm getting from it. And she is with one of her coworkers. They're trying to like kind of compete for a higher up job. And they are having kind of a competition between these two like fitness apps. Her goal is she just wants to feel good about herself. She doesn't necessarily want to lose weight, but she just wants to feel happy in her body. And so she joins this app and she's trying to work through it, and she meets the trainer guy, the coach. He is coaching her through text. But they are really starting to bond and form a connection. He is actually the owner of the business, and it's hard for him because he's starting to kind of blur lines with like following the rules, because he's starting to fall for her. And he also has his ex who is like lingering in the background. So it's been really good. I love Denise Williams' writing. She just makes it so easy to read and get through. So I will probably, my goal today is to finish this and this. But we'll see. But yeah. I will let you know how that goes in my wrap-up part 2, which will come at the end of the month. So I hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know what you're reading down below, and I will see you guys really soon. Bye, everybody.